things theology, all things theology. We chop it up properly, without an apology. Gotta give that theology to God, hallowed be, cause this is how we do it at All Things Theology.
Yo, grace and peace. Welcome back to an episode of All Things Theology, where this is your host, K-Dub. Today, I want to continue responding to more information that has come out about the Robert Morris scandal. If you didn't know, CBN News put out an interview of Cindy Clemishire where she spoke out on the matter. I'll put that full interview in the description if you would like to watch that. Well, I want to play certain portions, give some commentary and some other things that Robert Morris has said kind of over the years about this scandal, this falling out, so to speak, and see what that means for the church, see what the Bible has to say about this matter. So without further ado, let's actually get right into it.
Well, and many people, are afraid to speak out. They're afraid to share. One thing with you and your family is you have openly talked about this. You have tried to get people to listen. And sometimes it takes hearing other people sharing their story for people to come out and share what happened to them, as you were just saying. I want to talk about your faith in a moment, because that is a part of this story that we have not heard a lot about, but it was something I immediately noticed seeing your interviews, hearing you speak out. When your interview came out, though, before we get there, the interview comes out, there was a response from Robert Morris in which he talked about this past incident. He sort of made it sound, he used the term young lady, I believe, twice in his statement. You've commented on this, but I have to ask you about it. After all that has gone on, all of the conversations you've had, in seeing that statement, what went through your head and your heart when you saw that language?
Well, the first thing is, I have a 12-year-old grandson. He is not a young man. He is barely a preteen. He wants to think he's a grown-up as a 12-year-old boy, but he is not. I have a 6-year-old granddaughter. I can't even imagine. It just rips my heart out thinking about her being in that situation. I have a son that's now 19, that when he was, I think around 13 or 14, someone was trying to groom him. And that person, a man, I was able to help some other parents be aware of what grooming looked like. And
I do think that's what she went through. I do believe Robert Morris groomed her. But one thing because a lot of people have contested some of the surrounding details, and that's actually normal in cases like this, right? You're getting around the facts of the issue. But one thing that's not contested is that this actually happened, even from Robert Morris's own, profession. Now, he's tried to make himself look better, right? Calling her a young lady, kind of putting in our mind that she was actually older, and right, inappropriate relationship, so he's been more vague, but he has admitted something happened with Cindy. So because I know from other comments, some people have tried to put blame on her, a 12-year-old, which is kind of ridiculous. But anyways,
3 months later, the police were involved, and he ended up in prison. So I was not a young lady. It was a crime. I was a little girl. All I kept thinking when I heard young lady was, I want to consider myself a young lady now as a grandmother. But at 12, I was not a young lady. It was, of course, it makes me a little angry, but at the same time, it's just the whole deception of all of it. So I wasn't shocked, but I definitely did not like that term.
How, you talked before about the effect on your family. Talk a little bit about the effect in them finding out about this. This obviously went on from the time you were 12. Your story says 12 to 16. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But once your family found out, how did this affect them, not just immediately, but throughout the decades?
How much time did you say we have? And I say that with kind of joking, but I'm not joking. There's too many things, too many facets of that. I actually told when I was 17. So it was like March of 1987, and my birthday's in January. So, I know people have tried to figure out how old I was, like 12 years and how many months or whatever, but it doesn't really matter. I was 12. I was not a teenager yet. And I told when I was 17, and it did go all the way through my 16th, through the full year of being 16. I don't recall if we saw.
And let me just interject here. I don't think it would even matter if she was a teenager or how old. Robert Morris was married. I mean, let's not let's not forget all about that, right? He married, had children. This is someone being a traveling evangelist. So even if someone makes her as old as possible, Robert Morris is still at fault. And I think many people try to put blame on this woman.
Each other during the year of 1987, those first 2.5 months. But when I did tell, one of the things I'm sure you read that was he told me the very first time, you can't tell anyone because it will ruin everything. And as a 12-year-old, I had no idea what that meant. And as I, grew and got older, I still didn't really know what it meant, because when I told, I felt like it ruined everything in my life. It ruined everything in my family's life. All of them, they were very close family friends, and so was the other family that I involved in telling. The lady that was my mother's close friend, and her kids were our age. People have been a little confused about that story, but my dad was devastated. Robert has a sermon that's been circulating, the clip about how he looked for little girls, and there's little girls need the love of their father, and they need to be hugged, and they need certain things, and if they don't get that, they're going to look somewhere else. And then so he was describing what he looked for and how he preyed on little girls is what he did in that sermon. But when I heard that, I immediately said, that wasn't me. My father is still a very loving, kind man. He was and still is an incredible dad and leader in our community. And I grew up in a wonderful home, wonderful grandparents, wonderful aunts and uncles and cousins. And I was not lacking in any way. I was just a 12-year-old little girl that didn't know any better, that didn't know that someone would do something like this.
Yeah, we're going to play that here in a second. But before we get to that, she even says, hey, when Robert Morris approached her, and, he was taking advantage of her, essaying her, he would constantly tell her to don't tell anyone, right? Sure, there was further language used about that, but he again, this is grooming, predatorial behavior from Robert Morris. Now, we're going to look at that sermon. It was a sermon in 2012 where he kind of describes kind of what he looked for. And though she says, hey, I had a good relationship with my father, I do think he preyed on her naivety, right? I mean, I get it. She's 12 years old. Of course she's naive. We all were when we were 12 years old, right? I mean, right, still some of us are maturing. And so this sermon is called Rebellious Roots. And it's literally like in the first 4 or 5 minutes, he starts getting into this story. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a few clips of this. And just to see, it sounds like he is trying to describe some aspects of himself and this relationship he had with Cindy on some aspects. But let's just listen for yourself.
Rejection roots. We talked about rejection and how rejection formed me in my early days and could keep us away from Christ. And this week, rebellious roots. My rebellion took a form of immorality that I don't like to talk about much. I was very sexually immoral as a teenager, and it started early in my life, and it was very easy for me. Now I'm going to share something with you that I've really had to struggle with sharing the details, things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. But when I say it was easy for me, I was very immoral, and I was immoral a lot. And I can remember a conversation with my friends, and they said, one of them said, you're just blessed. That's what they said. Because we would go out and meet girls, and I would end up being immoral just in one night. And so they began actually, it's so horrible to share this because of what the word blessed means to me now. And that I've written a book called The Blessed Life, and it's about giving, not taking. And it's about giving to give, not giving to get. So it's the total opposite of the way I was before I met Christ. Here's what I've realized. I was not blessed, I was cursed. There was a curse on my life where immorality.
I do want to address something real quick because he, a lot of his theology is rooting in that. He's even talking about his view of blessedness is giving to give and not to get. That's actually false. I mean, he's the one who's taught if you tithe and you don't get a return back on that in a year, he'll give you your money back. So his theology is rooting in giving to get. And I believe Robert Morris is just a compulsive liar. And maybe even he lies so much he doesn't even know. He can't remember his lies. And he's kind of going to admit to him being a liar. So this is not me just interjecting, but, I just wanted to say that just about his theology because his theology is bad as well as his practice.
Came easy for me. In other words, there was a bent toward that. I'm going to show you that the Lord showed me what the root of that curse was. The reason I'm going to show you is because I think if there's a bent toward your life toward a certain sin, maybe God could show you the root and you could cut the root off and not have that fruit anymore. You understand what I'm saying? I learned to lie and manipulate because I also had rejection. I didn't want to be rejected. So I looked for the girls that would be the most susceptible. And I learned how to spot this in girls. Please.
Yeah, wouldn't young children be the most vulnerable of them all? They're naive. They're not mature. They don't know much. They haven't had much experience. So he's not lying when he says this, right? So, I mean, he's telling the truth. So I think there's going to be some admissions in some sense in hindsight that actually makes this story like, wow, okay. It's almost like he's trying to tell some aspects of the details, but also spin them in a favorable way for him as well.
Hear me. There's a reason I'm sharing this. The very thing, ladies, that the world tells you to give a man before marriage so that you can keep him is the very thing that will cause you to lose him. I looked for girls that did not have a good relationship with their father. I learned to spot that. I looked for girls that were insecure. And I don't know, now I look back on this, I can tell I did it. It wasn't like a plan that I had, but I could spot this. Girls were made to be held by men. And if they are not held, if that need is not met in a healthy way by their father, they will meet it in an unhealthy way. But you need to understand that if a man does not respect you, he cannot love you. He cannot love you. As a matter of fact, fulfilled lust turns to hate.
Now, again, so I'm going to put this sermon in the description below if you want to watch all of it. But I also want to play one more part because I think it sheds some more light just on kind of his mindset and the manipulation that he would do. It doesn't actually sound like there's only one case of this, even from his admission in this clip. Let's check it out.
And I'll just give you one quick so that hopefully you'll understand this. In order to have premarital sex, you have to sneak around to do it. And you have to lie, and you have to be deceptive, and you have to be manipulative. For instance, let me just take a teenage couple. When the teenager's about to go out, and the parents say, "Where y'all going tonight?" They don't say, "We're going to have sex." So they have to lie. And then when they come back, where'd you go? What'd you do? They have to lie. So you learn to lie. You learn to be deceptive. And you get this feeling in you of adrenaline rush because you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. But once you get married, you don't have to sneak around anymore. But you've developed an appetite for sneaking around sex that sex in marriage can never satisfy that appetite because you don't have to sneak around. And this is why a man will begin to talk to someone at the office and begin to flirt, and he is satisfying, and I'm going to say this in a very strong way, but he's satisfying an appetite that you created in him.
Even how he describes this, it's very deflective, even to the why the man, the husband, goes and cheats on his wife is deflective actually to the wife. And there's a lot of blaming that he does in this clip, and it never really takes full responsibility, even resigning, rather than admitting the victim's name, actually what really happened. a lot of deflecting over the years. Even, I think his wife even said to Cindy, she forgives her, or something of that manner. A lot of victim blaming and deflection you see when it comes to Robert Morris.
And I'm not saying that it's right, but I'm trying to get you to understand how important it is not to create an appetite in someone before your marriage. Don't stir up love before it's time, Song of Solomon says. And what will happen is this man will begin to have an affair, and now he's sneaking around. And he'll begin to feel like with her like he felt with you before you got married. And he associates that feeling with love. So he'll begin to think that he loves her and not you. So he divorces you, marries her, and guess what? He doesn't have to sneak around anymore. This is why many men will say, it's just not the same. It's just not the same. And then they will bring things into their sex life that God didn't intend to try to spice it up, quote unquote. And it's not the same because you create an appetite. I'm telling you that my wife and I, we had to deal with things that we should not have had to deal with because of my sin. And I asked the Lord after I got saved, God, what was the root? Why? They said I was blessed. I know I wasn't blessed. I was cursed. Multiple affairs. And I don't understand this, God. And so what was the root?
So he admits to having multiple affairs on his wife. We know that he got married at very young, right? Which is not a problem in its right. And we know that when he had an inappropriate relationship, to use his language, with Cindy, he was still young. So this happened very early on in his marriage. And so it seems from his admission, this wasn't considered an affair, even from his own admission. That's clearly what it was. Multiple. Yet he's going around being a traveler evangelist. And I agree with Cindy that he should step out of the pulpit. No one's saying he can't be saved. No one's saying he can't be accepted back into the fold. I actually think Cindy's attitude about this was actually kind of, it definitely seems like she's gotten over a lot of the pain, a lot of the hurt. I want to play one more clip from her because a lot of people are asking, what now? What next, right? What is the goal? And she kind of gets into that here, and I would like to just allow her to, share her view on this.
My final question for you, you've been so generous with your time here. You have an attorney now who is, I'm assuming, helping you navigate some of these things. Where does this go next? What is the sort of the next phase of this? What are you going to be dedicating your time to in addressing this further?
I don't really know how all of the things will work out. I really don't have any legal recourse, which is part of why I gave my name. Why not give my name? I have nothing to hide here. I've done nothing wrong. And so that was why would I hide? I do know I want to help other victims. I want people to be free of shame, and really, it's a lifelong journey. I know I will have more to process even after this part of the journey. But anything I can do to support people that are on that same journey as me, I want to do. I also have a very strong position on we need to change the statute of limitations across the country, not just in my state or Texas. I live in Oklahoma. It happened in both. So people have reached out, there's no statute of limitations in Texas anymore. Well, it's not retroactive. So I've been, contacted by some people down there, representative in Texas, that would like to.
What I think she's saying is because it happened possibly what she's saying is maybe it happened at a time when the statutes of limitations were in effect, and so ultimately what she's saying is it's not as clear cut as what many people think, and so it is possible that Robert Morris may get away with this from a legal standpoint, right?
Have some input on how my story could maybe help with that. So I want to be active in any way I can with changing the laws to protect the victims and not the predators, because I feel like they are continuing to protect the predator when they change the law. But you can't speak about it even if it happened to you and you're alive. So that just doesn't work for me. And, you know, I believe in forgiveness. I believe that Robert can still repent. I believe, you know, I don't believe there's been repentance because it's been continued deceit, but that's between him and the Lord. So I am not one that says he can't be forgiven and he can't change, but I don't believe anybody that's done anything like this or really any other sexual immorality biblically should be in the pulpit if they're a Christian when it takes place.
Well, and you have been, you know, again, you and your family hearing that detail of you going and saying, hey, this is what happened to me. Hey, this is what happened to my sister. Hey, to not ever, you know, have that, purportedly not ever have that be addressed in any significant way is alarming. I mean, there's no other word for it other than alarming. And I think, again, you speaking out about this, it can help other people who have gone through similar things. You know, Cindy, I appreciate you taking the time, joining us today, sharing your story, particularly your faith story, hearing how you've held on to God. Really appreciate it today.
Well, I appreciate your time, and just, again, pray for all the other victims out there that they can find their faith too, again, if they've lost it, or just be stronger in it.
It's important to note that Morris's statement did not mention the name or age of the individual with whom he had inappropriate sexual behavior, and he has since remained silent after leaving Gateway Church. As for the church, elders issued an initial statement that Morris had been, quote, open and forthright about a moral failure he had over 35 years ago. That statement added that Morris also went through a 2-year restoration process and stepped out of ministry to undergo counseling during that time. It ended with the church commenting that the matter had been, quote, properly disclosed to church leadership. Then, as additional claims became public, Gateway released a new statement calling the allegations, quote, deeply disturbing and committing to combat abuse. The church has hired a law firm to conduct what it calls a thorough and independent inquiry. Most notably, this new statement admits, quote, regrettably, prior to Friday, June 14th, the current elders did not have all the facts. The Board of Elders is deeply committed to walking in integrity and finding the truth. CBN News will continue to cover this story as new details emerge.
Very, very interesting. And again, my position is that Robert Morris shouldn't be a pastor. I've said this for years, even before I knew of this. Based on his theology alone, it's very problematic with prosperity gospel teachings, troubling views on Jesus' nature, as Justin Peters has talked about on his podcast. But unfortunately, what usually happens in this case is a pastor will sit down for a year or two, maybe even 5, right? Let the smoke blow over. And then next thing you know, they're doing a reinstallment, how God is restoring them back. And I fear that's what will happen with Robert Morris, unless there are more victims and unless there are more victims that speak out. I agree with Cindy that this shouldn't be happening in the church, let alone the adultery, but let alone with children. I mean, it's been disturbing to see some of the comments blaming her, a 12-year-old. I mean, my goodness. Why didn't she do this? Why didn't she do that? Guys, this is a predator we're speaking of. Yes, he had predatory behavior, even as a young man himself at 20 years old, and for 4 years doing this to her, gaining the parents' trust. Now, we can talk about what the parents should have did. Yeah, okay, I probably will agree with those things. This should have been handled legally a long time ago. I don't think the parents probably would agree. Cindy probably would agree with that. But again, the blame goes to Robert Morris. And yes, more people who have been done this to need to be speaking out, because the last place this should ever be happening is the church. So hopefully, justice can be served. So thanks for watching this video. Till the next time, grace and peace. Yo, grace and peace. Thank you for watching another episode of All Things Theology. If you enjoyed what you heard today, go on and give me a like. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell. I promise to give you weekly lives, videos, interactions, exposing false teachers, sharing with you, the viewer, my theological beliefs, things about the culture, and the Bible. So if you're here for that, come on and join us. Also, if you would like to support this channel financially, you can do so by becoming a Patreon member or a YouTube member. Links are in the description below. You can see content before it drops. You can also have Q&A sessions with also other Patreon members, YouTube members as well. So if you would like that, hit the description link in below.